Final hour overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jonas Siegel of The Athletic. Our friend Craig Button coming up here in a moment. Bunch of games in the NHL today. Winnipeg, 11 wins in a row. 11 wins in a row, and they deserved the 2 points last night. Did
they ever, man?
Yeah, like that Adam Lowry too, man. What is Cleven thinking? What are you thinking? Fighting Adam Lowry.
Well, I don't. Did he have much? Of a choice?
He didn't really have a choice. It happened quick.
I guess.
I mean, that's Cleven and that's Lowry. So what's he gonna do with this guy?
Well, he got his mitts off pretty quick, man. Like it wasn't much. No, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Like Lowry wanted a piece of him, and he made sure of it. And Cleven now he's hurt, and I believe that was his first NHL fight. That's a big one to take on. For sure. And
what a luxury that Lowry is, man. Like, that guy can score. He's a big man. He's competitive. Like, wow.
Well,
kills penalties. Like,
exactly.
What a luxury to have that guy.
And when he got hurt, they moved Nemestikov in there on that second line because Lowry was playing second line center at times, like earlier in the year. And now I think they've got him in the perfect place. Mm-hmm. You got him on that third line, and they are loaded. Like, they are loaded, and they perform every single night.
You know what they're like? They're like the Boston Bruins of 2 years ago. You know how they just tweak with that lineup, and then all of a sudden they put it on the ice one year, and they brought Krejci back, and Bergeron came back, and they got it Taylor Hall. And the tweaks that they did, it just worked, and it clicked. And that's what Winnipeg's got.
Yep.
Can I
Pretty
ask
much
you, though?
same cast of characters, and they've tweaked, and now they got the right mix. It's just a matter of can they avoid getting punted in the first round like Boston did. And, like, you got to think if Boston got by Florida, they were going to win the Stanley Cup. Do you not think?
Yeah, I mean, they would have played the Leafs in the second round.
Well, you just think that they would have put it together with all that they had. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
they were in a good place.
That was a bit of a scare. Let's get back to Boston Bruin hockey, and we're going to start crushing teams.
Yes.
Don't you guys
heavy favorite?
But don't you ever worry about the teams that have really good regular seasons, like great regular seasons, that it's just like,
Well, the President's Trophy winners
exactly.
always seem to have brutal playoff success. So what's actually the point?
Yeah. It comes up every single year. I think the Blackhawks in 2015 were the last team to win the Cup that won the President's Trophy. Because, it comes up every single year. And generally speaking, there is that one or two teams that kind of lap the field. Last year wasn't really the case. Like the Rangers won the East, and I think they won the President's Trophy. They were a good team, but not a great team. Mm-hmm. And then the year before, though, like Boston was historically great that regular season. And they made a lot of moves at the deadline.
Yeah.
They brought in a number of pieces.
They went all in.
They got Orlov. They got Bertuzzi. Garnet Hathaway they picked up. I don't anticipate that Winnipeg will do the same thing. And honestly, I look at Winnipeg and I wonder what are you getting? Like what are you trying to attack? Maybe you try to bring in a defenseman like everyone does with depth. Maybe you bring in a fourth line forward, but you're not going to bring anyone that's going to knock their current kind of depth chart out of whack. I can't picture that being the case, right? Because they've figured out, like, to your point, you look at a lot of the players that just have kind of chipped in, like the peripheral player, and I don't know if Gabe Velarde would count as that because he's playing on the top line.
Point a game.
But exactly, like he's
Niederreiter, Appleton.
Yes, and Cole Perfetti's starting to put it together, and that was their top
prospect. That's why all the tinkering
and
and tweaking, like bringing in Niederreiter and Appleton, I believe, a couple years ago was like a transaction waiver loss, and then all of a sudden they got him back, or they might have been an expansion to Seattle. Mm-hmm. But anyway, they got him back, and just everything. They got a young guy in Perfetti, and all of it, like the PLD trade, the players that came in for him, it all kind of worked, man.
Everything works, man. That's Sandberg.
When you got it clicking like that, you said it earlier in the show, Hayes, like you gotta make it count. Because in today's NHL, who the hell knows what your roster is going to look like next year? Might not be anything like it. You might not have the same mojo. You saw it with the Bruins. Like, they put a year together that was historic. Winnipeg's kind of doing the same thing this year. You got to strike, man. You got to make it count.
Yeah, well, ask Craig what he thinks their plan of attack should be. Like, Craig would probably
That's the thing. Do you want to screw with the juju?
It's a great question. because the best team, the teams at the top do it every single year. Like the two asking themselves this year are Washington and Winnipeg. Like they're lapping the field in both conferences.
But different situations, right?
Yeah, and I believe Boston, the year they had that season, they went out and they got Hathaway and they went and got Orlov from Washington.
And Bertuzzi.
Yeah. But they still were clicking leading up and they just couldn't get it done. Let's ask the GM what his thoughts would be.
All right, here he is, Craig Button. Craig, I guess we'll ask you to play the role of the GM in Winnipeg with, considering how well they're playing and they've won 11 in a row and they're going to run away with the division and the conference in terms of points and standings. What would your approach be to the trade deadline?
I'm going to take you back to 2008, and Ray Shero was the general manager in Pittsburgh, and he traded. They were talking about how well they were playing, and they traded Colby Armstrong, and people were like, "Geez, why do you trade Colby Armstrong? He's Sidney Crosby's, real close with him, real good friends. You're gonna, how's the chemistry gonna look?" They traded for Marian Hossa. Yeah. You know what players want? They want a chance to win. And when they get good players that come in that are good people, you're gonna be excited about it. Sidney Crosby and Colby Armstrong are always going to be good friends. You just went through it with Boston. You can go through any different teams. The Vegas Golden Knights added players. The Colorado Avalanche added players. At the end of it all, players want to win. And it's as a manager, you want to make sure you're bringing in players that address the areas that are important to strengthen your team and bring in good people. Because and I say this all the time, the players always know, and they always know first.
Okay, so in terms of looking at what Winnipeg has and what you think they need to upgrade on, no team's perfect. With that in mind, if you're being aggressive and you're going to be chasing whatever you think is out there, is there a position in particular you think would make the most sense for them to try to upgrade at?
2 spots. Second line. And it can either be a center or a winger. They're too light on the second line. Ehlers, Nemesnikov, Perfetti, it's too light. That's the soft underbelly. You go into a playoff with that line, that's where teams are going to try to poke you. I think that's a vulnerability for them. So if you get a center, Brock Nelson comes to mind, Braden Shan, Ryan O'Reilly. If you get a winger, Alex Tuck, Ricard Raquel come to mind. That's the area I think they have to be stronger in. Does it have to be 2 players in there? Last year he traded for Monahan and Toffoli. Worked out great. Could he do that? Perhaps. But I think they need at least one winger that's bigger that gets some heft because they're I think they're too late on that second line. Third pair right defenseman.
Okay.
David Savard. That's the guy I want.
I like it. Go ahead.
Is there any risk, Craig, when or just do the players understand, okay, management, we've had this season for you. Now it's time to add, or do you think there's any sense from the players ever, let's not try to screw with this too much?
I think that yes. To answer your question, you don't want to be messing in the wrong areas. But I think that when you address an area and you're clearly looking at something that can be stronger and you've identified, the players know and the players understand that, and the players know that there's going to be a subtraction along the way with respect to players. But it's when you bring in a player that doesn't fit. When you bring in a player, I don't think teams bring it. The players everybody's doing their work, good people, some players are better than others. It's when you bring in players that really don't fit and don't address what your strengths are. And then, you're starting to go, geez, does this really help us? Because the players are playing against one another. I listened to Nathan McKinnon after the game talk about Marty Nashus last night. He says, yeah, when we got him, I watched video of him. I wanted to see what he was all about, right? And now he's excited. The players are going to know. So it's up to the management to make sure that whoever they're adding doesn't create an environment now where there's doubt. Oh, boy, does this make us stronger? I'll give you an example of our team in '99. We made a lot of trades and additions up to that point in time, and we were looking to strengthen a team and bolster our team like every team. Then we got to the point where we did. I think Colorado added Andrechuk and Hunter, and the Detroit Red Wings added Wendell Clark. And I remember sitting in the office, and Bob Gainey was looking and go, oh, geez, maybe we should have done something. Finally, somebody said, wait a sec, we believe in this team. We won the President's Trophy. But it wasn't until after, and Ed Belfour, I don't know when it was, a week later, somebody goes, we got a good team here, Bob. He told Bob, he said, we got a good team here, Bob. We can get this done. So there's going to be times when you have to do a little bit less rather than more. And I'm not saying that the Winnipeg Jets need to do. David Savard's not a big thing, and he's not going to displace somebody that's like entrenched in the team. And I think if you add a center and you add or a winger, you're not going to just displace somebody. It's just going to maneuver and move players around.
With Craig Button. So obviously we've been discussing the Leafs and their plan between now and next Friday. And Braden Shedden's name is out there. Scott Lawton's name is out there, among others. Centers, third-line centers. Maybe we were wondering, we were talking about this earlier, and I'm curious how you would approach this. Any acquisition of a player with term, do you have to consider John Tavares and his future? In other words, if you bring in a guy, let's say it's Braden Shedden, using him as an example. He's got 3 years left at 6.5 after this. Do you have to think, okay, I know this year he's on my third line. Can he be my second-line center, and does this have any effect on what we're going to do with Tavares in the future? Do you think it's imperative the Leafs have to consider all of that before they possibly make a move on a player with term?
Absolutely, and those are all things that you factor in as you're weighing different options and everything that goes with it. But the other thing, too, that you have to think about, too, and it applies to Winnipeg, it applies to Toronto, is okay, you have these really good group of players. You have players that are having, in the case of Winnipeg, career years and everything, maybe not so much in Toronto. But you have the contract of Tavares expiring, where Marner's at. When are you going to have another opportunity like that? And so I think you also have to look at it, like, how do you give a little more heft to the team? How do you give a little bit more strength within the group? Because for Toronto, and Winnipeg is the same. It's like, okay, you've had this great regular seasons. You have some stars. You haven't done very much in the playoffs, if anything at all. If you call winning 5 games total under this regime in the playoffs a success, then you know what? That's not what I define it. Winnipeg got thumped last year and certainly didn't look the year before against Vegas. So trying to move forward, you factor in the future, Brian, but at the same time, you better not lose sight of the present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Craig, we were talking about Shen a little bit earlier. I was wondering if you could pick one of these centers. Let's say Brad Treliving called you and he said, Craig, which of these centers should I try to get? Who would be number one for you on that board?
So we're talking about Shen, Nelson.
Nelson,
O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the conceivably available guys.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to get to a group there, Jonas, that would give me a little bit of an idea. I mean, Ryan O'Reilly and Braden Shen played for Craig Berube. Mm-hmm. So to have somebody in there with Craig Berube that he knows and knows how to utilize them and can bring in and the winning experience, they would be the first 2 guys that I would have on my list. If you put my feet to the fire, I would go with Ryan O'Reilly because, and people say, well, he was in Toronto before. Yeah, he was, but he wasn't with Craig Berube when he was there. It was a different setup. And I think that Ryan O'Reilly coming in, like clear-cut number 3 center, like 3A, can he spell? But I think it gives Tavares a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to try to fit square pegs in round holes. The salary fits, the term fits. And I really like Braden Shen, but given my feet to the fire, Jonas, I would pick Ryan O'Reilly out of the 4.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think that's I guess the question is, A, does he want to come here? B, is Nashville going to trade him? C, what does it take to trade for him? But if price is similar for Shen as it is O'Reilly, I would think it's in the ballpark.
How about these
O'Reilly
prices,
makes more
Craig?
sense, yeah.
Did you ever think that there would be a day where third-line centermen were fetching first-round picks and prospects? Like, I find that to be crazy. I know it's the way it is, but it's also crazy at the same time.
Yeah, it's crazy too, but there's not that many sellers, right? Like, so when somebody comes in and you're trying to bolster your team, and a lot of teams are sitting here on the sidelines, are we in, are we out? So they're not really looking to sell. So if a team makes a decision and with more buyers, with less sellers and more buyers, prices go up. So I think teams could really benefit by looking at the climate and the landscape and going, wait a sec, yeah, it's crazy to think that we could get a first-round draft pick for a third-line center, but that's where the market is at. We look back to last year, Jeff. Chris Tanev went for a second-round draft pick because that's kind of what the market was. Maybe this year, David Savard before had gone for a first-round draft pick. Markets change, but that's where we're at. And I think because there's teams that are trying to bolster their lineup, they're ready to pay that price because, quite frankly, that first-round pick might help you in 4 or 5 years.
Mm. Well, and that's where we look at all these Canadian teams and where they're at. There's different layers to it, obviously. We've talked about Winnipeg. We've talked about Toronto. I think Edmonton would be in that category in terms of, perennial playoff team, high expectations. And then you get to the next layer, which is Ottawa, Vancouver, Calgary. As of now, Vancouver's in the playoffs, Calgary and Ottawa on the outside looking in. When you look at the three of them, which one sticks out the most to you in terms of the one that should be the most aggressive to be pushing to make the playoffs?
I think it's got to be Ottawa. I think that they've shown. I mean, I know Pinto and Tkachuk
Norris and Tkachuk,
and Norris are out. I mean, it's hard to win when you lose 3 players of that magnitude. It really is. I get it, but. The Ottawa Senators, I mean, they've been on the outside looking in. They've had these young players. Brady Tkachuk has even talked about the biggest game he's ever played, just wanted to play. We know what the playoffs can mean for players and in this case for a franchise. I think, Vancouver's kind of, and Jim Rutherford's acknowledged it, that we're not a contender. We're going to have to make maybe multiple moves to try to get back to contending position after trading JT Miller. Hopefully they're hopeful that Elias Patterson can find his way. Calgary is clearly into the future mode. I think if they're in a playoff run, great. If they're not, I don't think they're fussed by it. But I think Ottawa is the team that has to really seriously look at about how they can try to find a way to get in the playoffs. Now, if they realize that 2 or 3 of those players are going to be absent, well, maybe you change it. But knowing that they can come back, I think that's the team.
Yeah.
Craig, Vancouver was just brought up there, and Patterson has been talked a lot about in the last, I guess you can call it year. Like sometimes you have a lot of meetings with the coach, the assistant coach, and when it escalates and you got the meeting with the GM, things probably aren't good. Like, what would your message be to him if he walked through the door of your office, being the general manager, watching what you have watched for the past year of Patterson?
Yeah, one thing I want to say this because I sent Ray a note, but when he was on the other day with you guys, and I thought it was 25 minutes of great listening, just easy listening. You went on to a lot of different topics, but he talked about Patterson, and I thought it was really good. I just wanted to say that to you. I sent Ray a note because I was really, really impressed as I expect from you guys.
Thank you, Craig.
I think that it comes down to me, Jeff. You've committed to Elias Patterson for 8 years at $11.6 million a year. And so when you're considering the different parts of trying to get a player back to that, you know him personally. It's trying to remind him of what he does well. And I think that's what you got to try to do on a daily basis.
I don't know where we're at here with Craigie. Do we have Craig? I think we got Craig. I think maybe it's a glass of water. Could it be a scenario like that? I hope it is. And we're back. We got you, Craig? We got you? You okay?
I'm here. Don't worry. I'm
okay.
Here.
All good. All good. You need a moment? You tell us, because Jonas can give us his top 10. Okay. Okay.
I'm good.
All right.
I'm good.
There you go. Continue, please.
So, yeah, look, you're trying to just impress upon the player, this is what gives you success. And try to clear off for him 2 things. People don't need support when things are going well. Everybody feels good about themselves. You're playing well. You're doing things. If you believe in Elias Patterson, I think there's 2 things that have to happen. Privately, you have to tell him you believe in him and you're going to be there to help him. And then publicly, you got to say the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I'd probably love to hear it right now. I mean, it's just been a weird year for him. And, because Rick Tockett's taken kind of the opposite approach. Like he's been kind of blunt about his play. The other night he was calling him out, not moving his feet, not shooting enough. And Rick's a straight shooter, and that's what people are seeing.
He's also probably tried every other tactic where he's pumped his tires. I loved his work ethic. I loved it. And then you get to a point where you're like,
yeah, we need
out
you
of
here.
Stuff.
Like,
yeah,
we
I'm running out of
desperately
different
need you.
avenues.
Yeah. And that's
well, Ray talked about it on your show the other day. He can't understand why he won't shoot. And, you think about, like, just shoot. Yeah, I know it's easy. It's like when a baseball player, is standing at the plate and he knows he's got to swing and he knows he's got to swing at a good pitch, and yet they run into these 0 for 24 stretches and they're swinging at bad pitches. You go, why are you swinging at that? And, the work and just trying to get him into spots. A couple of years ago, well, it wasn't a couple of years ago, it was last year. And I remember it was American Thanksgiving 2023. And I was out doing the Montreal Canadiens broadcast. And Juraj Slafkovsky was struggling. And he, maybe struggling is the wrong word, but trying to find his way. You could see that he wasn't really totally confident in his game. Marty St. Louis put him out on the power play. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, that's interesting. But what Marty was doing was playing the long game. He was saying, by having him out on the power play, it's a little bit more static. It's a little bit slower. He gets puck touches and everything. And literally, I watched Uri's game in confidence just kind of grow and grow and grow. I think it's the same thing with Elias right now. You got to find those moments where you can get him, put him in a shooting position on the power play. Just say, you know what? You're in the shooter spot. You're going to have to shoot it. To try to get him to shoot the puck, and then try to trust what he's doing, and then try to get him into maybe some spots where he's against a little bit weaker competition, where he can try to take advantage and get his confidence. Confidence is, we talk about confidence. Confidence can escalate to high levels where you don't think there's anybody who can stop you. And it can go the other way, and you think there's nothing you can do that can make a difference. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the challenge now with Elias Patterson. We see it with athletes. But if I believe in Elias Patterson, now's the time to demonstrate it in him. That's what I would suggest for the Vancouver Canucks.
Well, we'll see how it plays out because they're back in action tonight. And Quinn Hughes is back, and, man, do they need him. And he factored into the OT winner last night. They had a 2-0 lead. It got away from them in the third, but they picked up a big 2 points. And again, we got a lot of action in the NHL tonight. It's going to be a fun one. Enjoy that, Craig. We always appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
You got it. Craig Button, our director of scouting here at TSN. And I like Craig's approach. Like in Winnipeg, he brings up a very good point on that second line. Like it's you got Nemestikov, you got Perfetti. Ehlers is a good player, but not overly big. Ehlers is not a big guy. Maybe that's where you attack, and then you push different pieces around, and
yeah,
they're going to be a fascinating team.
That's the problem with it, and that's where it sucks. It's like you have this team that's put together that has this fantastic season, and you would have to think if they do what Craig mentioned there and add to that line, maybe one guy off that line is probably going out the door.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, too.
You know what I mean?
That's
where the screwing with the chemistry stuff comes into play.
Yeah, and that's something everyone's got to take into consideration. And the deadline's so deep in the season, the trade goes down, you get 20 games to kind of figure everything out, and for the player coming in as well. The players walking in, they don't know the city, they don't know the room, they don't know the staff, they don't know the players. You're walking into a very positive scene, but that's another thing. That all the guys in the room are like, man, we've been rolling without you. I guess welcome aboard, but don't screw it up.
I wonder if it would be better if the trade deadline was earlier. Like the NBA trade deadline was like weeks ago.
Yeah, it was weeks ago. I'm not sure if there's a perfect spot for it.
Like, do you think teams would be more willing to sell earlier or less?
I think the concern is it's less because you have more games to make up more points to stay in the hunt. Yeah. Right, this is a rare year where there's only like 5 or 7 teams where they're out. They're out.
Yeah.
And
that's
even
what the league wants. They want everybody to be
well, and that's how they set it up exactly. And that
but Jeff's right. Like you're paying a first-round pick potentially for 20 games and then a playoff series.
Yeah.
Like
it's a lot, man.
Geez.
It's a lot.
I love this one. Maybe little production as well. First-round pick and your best prospect, give us that guy, and he might stink the joint out for you, and you might just,
exactly.
I don't know. It just seems bizarro world, and I do have to get adjusted because it's just like a first-round pick and your best prospect was for like Iggy.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but it was, man. It was for like a star player.
Like Joe Nieuwendyk, I believe, was straight up for Iginla. Now, obviously, it was a brilliant trade for both sides.
Yes.
brilliant for both. But it wasn't a Ginla and a first and something else.
Yeah, and that's Joe
I don't believe,
Nieuwendyk.
anyway. I don't believe.
That's
I'm pretty sure
Joe
it's 1 for 1.
Nieuwendyk. Dude.
Exactly. That was Joe, like, I'm going to win a Conn Smythe for you, Joe Nieuwendyk. And
Yes.
I'm going to the Hall of Fame. And
That's
you know,
the thing. You look at like CJ Stradeborns, like those are the best guys.
That's not Joe Nieuwendyk. That's not Joe Nieuwendyk. Chris Johnston actually just tweeting out, as reported on Insider Trading on TSN, Mikko Rantanen's camp is expected to let the Hurricanes know in the next few days where things stand on contract talks. And he wraps that up by tweeting out, while several teams have inquired about a trade, Carolina hasn't yet received or asked for a single offer. So,
I guarantee you that report back to the Carolina Hurricanes will not be a positive one. Because what else do you need to get? Like, it's either yes or no.
But do you think that that's part of why there's no deal? Is he's deciding whether he wants to stay? Like, do you think that's?
But
all
that's
it
totally
is?
reasonable for
Well,
Rantanen.
he was put in
Just
a
was
market
traded there.
where
Yeah.
he wasn't expecting. He just all of a sudden got traded to Carolina. He didn't
Yes.
dream up the scenario to show up in Carolina.
Yeah.
So he's thinking, I have an opportunity to pick the destination I want
Exactly.
to go to.
Yeah.
He's under no obligation.
Yeah.
And
None.
he could also say, guys, maybe in June I will sign with you.
Yeah, I just moved
Like,
here. I don't know.
I'm not giving you an answer between now
Yeah.
and next Friday, and you can figure it out if you want.
But he's
And-
also had thoughts of maybe this day was possibly becoming, and he had ideas of being an LA King, a New York Ranger,
Mm-hmm.
a Chicago. Who knows? And it's just, it hasn't fit what he thought this moment was going to be, so he's not sure. Can't blame the guy.
Well, listen, if he gets to free agency, it's going to be like he's the guy, you know.
Well,
Unless Marner goes there with him.
Then
Of
there's
course.
that.
Yeah, if Marner's there with him, then obviously that's going to be significant too. They're both wingers. I like this, again, you talk about having to adjust and get with the times. Like we keep talking about it and kind of fantasizing what it's going to look like, what the contract's going to look like for Marner, Rantanen. Let's say they both hit free agency to take the hometown stuff out of it and the 8th year out of it. I could not justify paying either of those guys, as great as they are, more money than what Austin Matthews or Leon Draisaitl make.
But you have
Same
to change.
thing,
but-
same.
No,
Same.
You don't have to.
Sorry,
Jonas.
the cap is going up significantly.
They play.
I don't
They
care,
play the
dude.
wing.
I don't care.
They're wingers.
Those contracts were signed before.
They're wingers.
What's wrong with wrong
Jonas.
with the Nick Lidstrom rule saying that guy makes that much? I don't care what the salary cap.
You
I don't
should
care
be
what.
against that. That's a team thing to hold salaries
I'm
down.
talking about the players. Okay,
You are out of line.
It's
I'm not.
first line center, number one.
Yeah, but you have
defenseman.
to. So do the.
Those guys get paid.
You know what we need to do? We need to do the math of what 13.25 in a new cap is.
It makes
Jonas, let
no
me just bring
difference
up
to me.
this
Guys,
idea.
No,
Let me just bring up
there's
this
more
idea to you,
value in the
Jonas.
middle of the ice, Jonas.
You're misunderstanding. I agree with you.
No, you're not.
I agree with you that the position is more important, but the cap is going up, so the percentage of the cap needs to be adjusted.
Yes, I understand.
William
that.
Nylander's contract in the new cap would be like $12 million.
Okay,
So
that's
like
not
we need,
13.5 or 14.
I get it, but I know what you're
Do
saying.
you
but
think either of those two guys should be the highest paid players in the league, regardless of everything else?
I
you
would
just
not
said?
do that either? No.
Thank you. That's
But-
all. That's
Why
all I'm
did
saying.
you just
Doesn't
cause
mean they
that
could-
problem you just did?
But doesn't mean they're not
Because
worthy
you
of
have to-
12.5 or 13 or something.
Because you guys are living in a world that the cap isn't going up. The cap
No,
is
no.
going up, so the percentages are all going to go up.
I know the cap's
2
going
years
up.
from now, someone you think it shouldn't be the highest paid player. Actually, it's
But guess who it's going to be?
It's going to be McDavid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then guess who it'll be after that? Probably
Makar.
Cale Makar. Guess what they are? Number one centers and number one defenseman.
Is a defenseman the highest paid player in the league? No,
But I believe Makar probably will be when he comes up.
maybe.
And then maybe Quinn Hughes. Hughes is up in 2 years too. But
Hey,
that's
Jonas,
my
you can
point.
You can ask what for whatever you want. Like you could have a number in your head, but what if you have the reality of teams aren't just willing to give you that? Like, is Rantanen say I want 14? Does another team in the league going to give Rantanen $14 million? Maybe some desperate team that has
Maybe.
no talent. Maybe they will. But I don't know if everybody's on board with giving him 14 a year.
But
I
it's
wouldn't
just
be.
like
Not sure.
if
I
you
wouldn't
look
be,
at
and
the-
I love him, and I love Marner as a player. I love all these guys as a player. The only winger of the last 25 years that is worthy of that conversation, there's one guy. One.
Go ahead.
He's going to pass Wayne Gretzky in about 3 weeks.
Oh, he was underpaid for most of his.
Right, but he's the only guy, the only winger that I would look at and say, man, that guy deserves to be the highest paid player.
Here's
in the
my
league.
point.
Patty
Like,
Kane
Alex
was pretty
Ovechkin.
good.
If you go back
Patty
to-
Kane was pretty good.
that's who I was thinking.
Pretty
you were gonna
good, but
say,
not.
actually.
not as valuable.
If you go back to when Marner signs the last contract,
3 cups.
at the percentage, the percentage he got of the cap at the time, if you give it a little bump to, I don't know, I think it's like 14%, it ends up being like around 13 million. And then if like you try to go even a little higher, if you're his camp to account for the cap being 100 million in 2 years, then you're talking like 13 and a half or 13.7,
Sure,
something like that. So you guys can be against it, but if I was their camp, I would do the same thing.
I asked for it all. That's why you have agents, and you can ask for it. I'm saying I don't think it comes up enough with Rantanen and Marner in particular, the positions they play. And if you're going to spend that much percentage of your cap on the wing, I don't think it's smart business.
But so what do you think they should be paid?
I don't know. They're still going to make 13 million, 12 and a half
What
or
are we
whatever.
talking about? The difference between 13
so then give them 17 million. Give them $18
But
million.
if 13 is okay, what's the difference in 13.25?
I said specifically I would not pay them more than Austin Matthews or
But
Leon
hang on a
Draisaitl.
second.
So would you guys
hang on
have-
a sec, both of you. I want to read this to you. This is a message from the voice of reason. His name is Joe from the Bridge. He said, just like we have to adjust the thinking of the price of a third-line center is now, we have to do that with the salary cap going up. Thank you, Joe from the Bridge.
All right.
You're insane for writing that. We know that.
I know. I'm not disputing that the numbers are going up. I also think it's a little bit dangerous to say, well, agents should be thinking of 2 or 3 years down the road.
They should.
But that's not how it works.
Yeah, but we didn't know what the cap was going to be 2 years from
It
now.
doesn't
before.
matter.
Now we know.
So you think Mitch Marner has the right to negotiate
Yeah.
based on from 3 years from now?
the cap is
He
going
should
up to, like-
14% of $108 million.
No, but maybe 100.
But it's not at $100 million.
But it's going to be. It's going to jump.
Did
and then
Leon Draisaitl do that?
No. But
Did
that
any
doesn't-
other
that doesn't
player?
mean you shouldn't.
Okay, well.
Dude, he
I'm not
just
saying
stuffed you in a body bag.
I'm not
He
saying-
just stuffed
We
you in
never
a
have
body
had
bag.
these conditions before. The NHL has never said the cap is going to be this,
Which
and
is
this year.
absurd behavior by the NHL. I still don't understand the benefit of them doing it.
It gives ammunition to the agents.
Exactly.
Of course it does.
Exactly. Why would the league want to do that?
You might even if. All right.
Guys,
I don't know why
let's take a break
JP's
and come
yelling
back.
at
This is
you.
fun. This is
JP's yelling at us.
Let's
All right.
take a break and get back to this.
right,
I
we
want to
will.
revisit this.
I got more in the tank. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, our best bets powered by FanDuel later in the hour. Jake Knapp, 59 at PGA National today. 59. 15th time in PGA history as the Florida swing has started up. So we got big picks next week, right? We got Bay Hill, the Arnie Palmer.
No Jordan Spieth, man, at Bay Hill.
That's
Just-
crazy, man.
Yeah, I love how Arnie Palmer's grandson, Sam Saunders, is calling the shots now.
Is he? He runs
Oh,
the
yeah.
show down there?
Yeah,
Nice.
and he gave an exemption to this guy named Campos that won in Bermuda, and he said the reason being is that Campo wrote a nice letter to him, something so thoughtful, he thought it was incredible, so he picked him over Spieth and Fowler.
Ugh.
Did someone from the TV networks not tap him on the shoulder and say, "Do you know what the hell's going on
Right.
here? Do you know what you're doing?"
Like, does Jay Monahan is he asleep? Where's Jay Monahan? Like, maybe snap out of it, Jay, and make sure that these guys are playing. You're having
I
ratings
guarantee
issues.
you, when Sam Saunders, the guy I just mentioned, he tried to play in the tournament a bunch of times, and Jordan Spieth probably called him a pigeon on the range, and that's why he's
100%.
100%.
Yeah, you know, he was like, "Hey, I like your gear. What's
Hey,
going on
Ricky
there?"
Jordan, want to play a practice round? Take a lap, you loser. And that's why they're not getting sponsors.
100%. The two of
Yes.
them. He tried to sniff out a practice round, and they absolutely dummied him and stuffed
They
him
made
in a
him
locker.
play by himself.
Yeah,
Arnie's
actually,
grandson.
You'll be playing by yourself. We won't be playing with you. And now the tables have turned, right, Jonas?
Actually,
Tables
here's
have
what
turned.
happened. They tried to get together for a practice round, and they said, "Sorry, man, we're stacked up. We got like a 4-ball at 2 p.m." And Sam Saunders was wheeling around by himself and saw those two by themselves. And he said, "That's it with those guys."
Yeah, I'll never forget. I'll never forget. And evidently he is not.
Did you guys straighten out in the commercial break?
well,
No,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
ready to. I'm ready to dunk on you guys.
Jonas's plan is every winger in the league gets paid big money.
Let me just do this try to do it like I'm a
do.
teacher.
Please do.
So Mitch Marner, I mentioned his last contract, 13.37% of the cap at the time. Okay, got that? If I'm him, I'd like a modest raise, right? Let's say 14% of the cap. Is that fair?
Well, do you think he was worth 13.7 at the time?
I mean, depends on how you feel about
Professor Jonas, I'm asking you. You've got all the answers. Do you think that was a smart contract by the Maple Leafs?
They did not get the length or the cap hit they should have gotten because they waited too long. There's no question about that.
Okay.
But let me ask you this: do you think the player ever thinks like, and it's easy for me to say because I don't play anymore, but do you ever think the player goes, man, like playing for my childhood team, I get to go out on the ice with Austin Matthews instead of getting to like this percentage of a what?
You're right. I think the biggest thing that you could do is
does anyone ever just look at the whole thing? I love this situation, and I'm going to make this, and you're still shoving a ton of change in your jeans.
This happened last year with the New York Knicks, where Jalen Brunson took less, and I don't even know if it actually was less, to allow the team to make other moves, and he became like a hero there.
Oh, it's so easy to play like to the mob. It's so easy. But anyway, continue with your numbers, please. Okay, 14%.
So let's just say I want 14%.
Reasonable.
Reasonable.
Okay.
14% of a $95.5 million cap is $13.37 million. That is more than Matthews.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So what do you do?
Well,
he wants like a modest
cap,
raise.
and I say Austin Matthews is our best player, and he makes 13, and no one else is. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing.
Like, I'm not going to percentages. I just say that guy's a unicorn, and he makes 13, and no one else is.
Yeah, you should be against that as a former player. Like that's just like teams holding. But
dude, I'm a broadcaster, man. That's all I am. I got to report on this stuff. I have charts. I got stuff I look at. That's just how I do business.
And listen, there's a finite number here. Ideally,
you're right. You're right.
If there was I would love there to be no salary cap. Every player get paid a fortune. That'd be great. And the Leafs have the money to do it. Pay Mitch Marner, pay Austin, pay him $30 million a year. Go get everybody. The salary cap burned the Leafs more than any other team, probably in the league. If not, they're right there with the Rangers.
But some of it was self-enforced. Like it wasn't.
In which way?
I mean, they waited too long on those contracts.
No, I understand. I'm talking about the salary cap, though. What I'm saying is, in a perfect world, there's no salary cap. But yes, they did negotiate poorly, the previous administration. Now Shanahan's still a part of this, and he was a part of that. But there's a finite number. Like you're team building. That's the thing. Like it's you can't just say, well, I accept 14%. I guess that's what it is. Like you're not going to do that on every negotiation.
No. But like he has some of the leverage here. He has an amazing playoffs.
100%. Listen, Mitch
he's going to get more,
and he's earned free agency. He's a great player that's had a great career, and if he wants to leave, there will be, I'm sure, 10 to 12 teams willing to put 13, 14 million a year in front of him. Like, I don't know if it would get to 14. That seems extreme personally. Yeah. But there might be. I wouldn't be shocked if there were a few teams that said, we have the money. We can't sign anybody else. We got to get something cooking here. We love you as a player. Here it is. That very well could be available to him. And I'm sure he's aware of that. I'm sure his representative is.
His representative, yeah.
The difference is, and this gets back to O's point, is if you want to be a Leaf, that shouldn't be available to you. If I'm running the team, I'm still willing to pay you $12.5 or something, which blows past your buddy Willie, who you've made more money than him the whole time. Mm-hmm. And, everyone can have their own argument, who's better, who's contributed, whatever. Fact is, they've both been teammates, both been great players, both have the same win-loss record.
Yep.
So that would be my approach. I'm not sitting here predicting what the Leafs are going to do, because the Leafs have proven in the past that when push comes to shove, they eventually get shoved. And they just say, fine, let's do it. We don't want any problems. You can have it. So I'm not going to sit here and predict that the Leafs won't give him more money than Austin Matthews. They might.
I'm not saying I would do that.
They might.
But I think it's like a reasonable case that they could make.
They could. But again, it gets sticky and it gets emotional when you start to look back. And this is where, again, I don't know how the Leafs can answer this, because Shanahan was in the room, and he's still in the room running the operation. If I'm tree living, it would be reasonable to say, guys, you got us on the last one. Like, you really got, because you're connected to Rantanen.
They're going to be like, cool, I don't care.
Of course they're going to say that, but it is totally reasonable to say, you guys are connected with Mikko Rantanen, both great players. Maybe you want the 150-goal scorer, maybe you want the guy with 70 assists. Rantanen got $9.5 million.
Yeah.
You got $10.9.
Well, and look,
You got 1.4 million per. You should not have ever gotten that deal.
Colorado just made this decision. They said you're not making more than McKinnon,
Right.
and he's like, okay, cool, and then they traded him.
Exactly.
But that's the choice that they might be confronted with.
It very well could be the case.
Did I
And-
sell you guys at all or no?
No, you didn't sell me on, again, with team building. And this, again, my point was more in general across the board when I'm looking at the way the league operates. Like the idea of one or two wingers being the highest paid player. Something's broken with the system if that
Panarin
happens.
is one of the highest paid players in the
But
league.
he's not the highest paid.
Okay, he's like 4th or 5th.
Okay. I'm just saying. Like, you got McDavid, you've got Draisaitl, you got McKinnon, you've got Matthews. All four of them are making more money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And yes, Panarin's making a lot of money. Ovechkin made a lot of money. Pasternak's making a lot of money. Willie's making a lot now. Marner's still making a lot, and he'll continue to make. I'm not anti-wingers making money, but the way it sets up is, generally speaking, in a perfect world, it should be number one centers, number one defensemen that make the most money.
But there's another layer to this. How deep in the weeds should we go with this? Am I going too deep in the weeds? Probably.
Well,
I
we're
think
talking
you've
about
The
gone
Matthews
far
deal
enough.
is only
I
4
think you've
years.
gone far enough.
yeah.
Is it too far in the weeds?
What do you mean? Where if Matthews signed an 8-year deal, would have been
Matthews
even
is
more
only a
money.
4-year deal. Like if I'm
Yeah.
like that anyway.
Yeah, he would have made even more, probably.
It's going to be
Or asked
interesting to
for
see
more.
how they handle this because
I don't know.
it doesn't seem like either deal is going to get done before the deadline, which I think is the right move. I think we all agree with that. But then that sets up the playoffs to be even more high stakes than normal. And then it's like, well, what happens if this happens and what happens if this happens? Like if they have a great run, what do you do? And if
They
they
gotta
don't
make
have a
that
great
call.
run, what do you do?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, and ultimately trying to predict what the Leafs are going to do.
Yeah, hard to do.
Their history would say they'll do everything they can to keep the players.
Yes.
Like that's what they've always historically done. Right? I don't know what we accomplished here.
I don't either. It was kind of like a roundabout, talking in circles type of argument. But
I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it.
Did
I
you?
had fun.
No, you guys had a good time. Well, that's what's important. What about my philosophy of team building? Number one centers, number one defenseman. That's where your money should go. Now, not every team has a number one defenseman. The Leafs don't.
Yeah.
That's
But
an important factor.
That
And
is an
what? Just a
important
little add on to Brian, to have one winger making 11.5, to have yet
Two.
another one on top of it.
Well,
think about that as far as team building.
Can I just
Right.
say, like, if I were them, I would also be like thinking in the back of my head, like, there's a guy in Edmonton who's going to potentially be a free agent a couple years from now. I just need to like, if I'm them, I need to like think about flexibility, like just on the off
That
chance.
is the ultimate point that doesn't come up enough, and I get it. And the Leafs are
Flexibility.
not alone in this.
Let's not do this.
No, we're not
Let's
saying
No,
it's
no,
just
no,
like
no.
something
You
they
have
are
to. It's
responsible
malpractice
front
not
office.
to.
You have to think about
For
it.
any front office in the league to look at it and say, until McDavid is signed in Edmonton,
Yes.
he could be available.
Mhm.
And what are you going to do if he gets
How do
there?
you prepare to have cap space just in case?
I don't know.
Man,
That's like all the
exciting
Tavares.
stuff.
That's even something we didn't talk about
exciting.
with Tavares, like that you have to factor in. Like if you're paying him and then you pay Marner, it's like then do you have enough? If
Yeah.
on that off chance, the 1% chance or whatever it is.
Well, that's the story this summer, right, in Edmonton, because as of July 1st, I believe
Yeah,
McDavid can sign the extension. He's got a year left after this. And, Draisaitl did it. He signed an 8-year deal, monster contract. That's another thing, comparing and contrasting with Matthews. Like, Draisaitl signed for 8, and it was 11. Why would Matthews for 8 be $15 million and Draisaitl was 13.25 or whatever? I don't know.
Matthews was 13.25.
Yeah, was Draisaitl 13.25 or 13.5? It doesn't matter. He was one of those two. Anyway, all right. Best bets powered by FanDuel coming up.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. I'm having a McDavid night.
McDavid special.
McDavid special. Oilers money line. McDavid anytime goal scorer. McDavid 2+ points. Paying plus 428.
Wow.
He has to have one. We saw his stats earlier, man. No 5-on-5 points in like 8 games. He's getting shelled. He's saying he doesn't feel like he's, playing well enough.
Party's over tonight.
It kind of feels like it is. Like 97's going to come out like a house on fire tonight. Today's best bets, powered by FanDuel Live Same Game Parlays. are now available for every NHL game on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly. 19 plus, physically located in Ontario.
Thinking about coming up with a special segment next week, possibly a Price is Right OverDrive Showcase Showdown for all 7 Canadian teams. Door number 1 is an option, door number 2 is an option, and door number 3 at the deadline is an option. It could come into play.
I love it.
That's great.
I love the way that sets up. All right, we'll do that next week. Doogie, start ironing out the details.
Yes, talk to insiders, get some different options, some different looks, some different availabilities, and they're all in a showcase showdown, and the OverDrive guys will pick the right door.
Yep. And you know what? As we get closer to the trade deadline, there's a chance by the time we're on the air tomorrow, there's some big deal has happened.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
You know, trades are going to start just slowly
out of the
filtering
blue.
out.
They're going to happen tonight. I would
Yeah.
bet one goes down.
I wouldn't be surprised either. Like a deal of substance happens tonight.
Clip that and save that for tomorrow.
Clip it. McDavid with a big game and a trade tonight. Clip it. All right, Jonas. Good seeing you as always.
thanks,
Thank you for
guys.
doing this. There's Jonas Siegel. Of The
Great
Athletic.
takes as always, and always love having you on, pal.
Always.
And I
Thanks for
mean
having
that
me.
sincerely.
Yes, he's one of our favorites. Love seeing Jonas. Thank you to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate that. Everyone for tuning in today, TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at...
I'm actually glad my brain wasn't mentioned in the same sentence as you two. 4 p.m.
We'll chat then.